Hello friends! You may have noticed, like me, a curious game appearing on the eShop lately with a curious title, Macbat 64 Journey of a Nice Chap. This is a 3D platformer that is clearly inspired by the games from the N64. It immediately got my attention from its presentation. It is common to see games adopt a retro art style to make it seem like a game from the days of the NES, for example, but this game, when I booted it up, it honestly felt like I had discovered a Nintendo 64 game that I had missed back in the day. It looked and sounded just like a game Rare would have put out back then. So far so good, right? Well, even better, this game is only £1.79. Wow, that's cheap! So, what's the story? You are in Kiwi land, a few years after the evil Melon King was defeated by the heroic Kiwi, which I believe to be the events of Kiwi 64, a previous title the developer worked on. But 2 years later, somewhere deep in the Caribbean, you play as the titular Bat. A parrot pirate tells you of how the world's water supply is at risk, and we need to collect the 6 keys to enter the water factory to see what the problem is. You are then taken to each level, which is a self-contained platforming area where you have to flap around and collect certain items people are asking for in order to end up with the key. This sounds like a really decent game for such a low price, doesn't it? What could go wrong, eh? Well, the problem is, on my first playthrough of this game, I beat it in about half an hour. So, although you are paying an extremely low price, you aren't getting much game here. But it's not all doom and gloom, as there is some post-game content, which I will go into a bit later on. Despite its very short length, there is a lot of charm in this game. The characters are very likeable, and it was enjoyable enough for the most part. The levels are all very different from each other and stand out in their own right, and there are some references to other games you can look out for. The gameplay is mostly fetch questing, however, and there is very little in the way of combat, and those few times you experience hazards, hitting them just sends you back a little bit, so the challenge is extremely low. I do wish to wrap up the review portion of the video here, because although I have a lot more to say about this game, I don't want to spoil it for anyone. I will go into spoiler territory in a minute, so all I'll say now is, if this looks at all interesting to you, then I think it's worth getting. It won't blow you away or anything, but for the asking price, you shouldn't regret that purchase. But just remember, you won't be playing this for much longer than an hour. If you're not a fan of the N64 era presentation and particularly don't enjoy these types of platformers, then this really isn't for you. I personally find the presentation and characters, they are the big appeal for this game, and that alone made it worth getting for me, even if the gameplay was very basic and the length was very short. If this game had cost about £10, then I would be hating on this game, but they are only charging £1.79 or $2 in America, and I have seen worse games on the eShop selling for higher prices. So that's the end of the concise review. If you enjoyed it, make sure you give it a like and hit that subscribe button to keep up with us in the future. Let me know in the comments down below what you think of this game before I go into talking about the game in full now, because I have a lot to say about this game and it just really fascinated me in a lot of ways. So with absolutely no filter now on what I'm about to give away, I am now going to talk about the game experience as a whole. So you start off in the pub needing to find 3 coins to buy a drink. Only then can the parrot tell you what's up. He takes you to all the levels to find the keys, starting with the beach. It's a simple stage where you have to find balloons to raise the cage where the key is hidden. You gain balloons from completing various tasks around the level, usually at someone's request. This octopus has eaten one, for example. Let's pop him. Most of the levels follow this formula. The next one has you in a wooded area, where this chap needs a cup, which is found in a Zelda-style dungeon area with very basic puzzles. To get in there though, you need to find a sword, shield and a hat before the owl lets you in, even though you never use them. And the next level is called Strangely Familiar Jungle. It's the same sort of thing, but you're finding balloons again. Things take a dramatic turn next as you travel to a completely different dimension. The second dimension. as you then have a 2D level called Bright Islands. It's very reminiscent of Kirby, where you find apples for a tree and it takes less than 2 minutes to beat. The next level is a very interesting one. It's called Tubular City and has an 80s aesthetic with Rubik's Cubes to bounce on, a couple of movie references. Hey look, it's a robot in sunglasses asking for Sarah Connor. Get it? It's like that film. Here you have to find 4 batteries to give to a car, so it can take you along this driving section where all you do is dodge barrels until the meter fills up. Hitting one gives you this slow motion crash that will make Burnout envious. Then I'm guessing it hits 88 miles an hour as it disappears and reappears again with those flaming tyre marks behind it. Get it? It's just like that film. So that's 5 keys down and 1 to go. We're doing pretty well here. But for some reason, the parrot wants to take a break and have a race in a cart. Why? Story-wise, this makes no sense, and gameplay-wise, it makes no sense. It's slow, boring, and easy. There are only 2 items that both boost you, and you suddenly get an octopus on your head for some reason, and I really don't get why this is even here. But let's move on to the Moody Mansion, where you get your last key. It's in an enclosed space, so the camera can be a problem here, but you just run around collecting keys to open doors in a certain order, and you eventually get into a room that tells you what order to hit 4 switches in to awaken the monster, and that finishes the level. Or if you're doing a repeat playthrough and you remember the order of those switches, you can just finish this level straight away. Why is this switch puzzle not in the final room? And then you finally open the water factory. Just swim around collecting screws before you can shoot a giant statue in the face, and that finishes the level. Yeah, that makes sense. Then you finally face off against the evil Melon King. Emperor, sorry. You dodge his hands, then shoot him in the face. Then you make his hands hit these switches until he blows up. Well, that was easy. Oh wait, a 3rd form. Oh, here we go. Epic platforming. The final battle to decide the fate of the galaxy, and... oh, it's over already? Credits roll. Half an hour of gaming well spent. But of course that's not all. As I mentioned earlier, there is a post-game, as you get a bonus book to try out. First level is another 2D one with... what's this? Actual hazards? Yeah, the buzzsaws can kill you here, although you do have infinite lives and you don't go back far, but at least that's some challenge, I suppose. Next we have this really creepy area with a weird camera and narrow spaces. Then we get this area with the temple, and this was something I thought was a brilliant idea. There was no way to fly high enough to get the trophy at first, but in order to beat this level, you need to find 4 treasures that are hidden on previous levels, and the characters standing around the area here will give you a hint. I say hint, what I really mean is they tell you outright exactly where they are, but the good thing about this is, those treasures are always there, so you can collect them when you play through the levels normally if you already know where they are, which does speed things up a bit. Bring them all back here and you will be gifted the power of eternal flight, which lets you fly out of bounds. Why would you want to do this? Well, on certain levels, if you go out of bounds, you can find these eggs with question marks on. Oh, it's like that stop and swap in Banjo-Kazooie. They're making a reference. Touching one will bring you to a weird area, but I really don't know what the purpose is for any of these. I get this is the exterior of the pub shown in an earlier cutscene, so you can explore here I guess, but this is just a pixelated map you fly around, and as far as I can tell you can't select anywhere. Just why is this here? The next level is a Christmas themed level where you have O Come All Ye Faithful playing, and you fly around trying to find 80 baubles. Oh look, it's the ice key from Banjo-Kazooie and a sign saying overused joke. It's a reference. They sure love those, don't they? Going out of bounds here shows you just how close this moon is to the village. Getting some creepy Majora's Mask vibes here. And finally you get a level based on Metroid. At first I thought you could speed around in this vehicle, but I was bitterly disappointed. You just go through the doors, explore a few rooms here, open a hatch, encounter this terrifying thing, and then there's suddenly a time limit. Get back to the ship and the game is complete, the planet blows up, credits roll, yay! But is it all over? There's this mysterious cutscene showing the Bat and Kiwi chilling. But the Kiwi spots an island that disappears. What does that mean? Not sure, but what I do know is, going back to Strangely Familiar Jungle, there is now an open door leading to another game called Kiwi 64, which is that previous project I mentioned earlier from the developer. Now this just screams Banjo-Kazooie at me, with the music and the gobbledygook voice clips and the villain that tells rhymes. You're in an area that reminds me of Click Clock Wood, there are musical clefs to collect, and the boss is at the very top of the level. You defeat him by finding 5 magic lamps, each of which is found by running an errand for a character, kind of like how you would get Jiggies in Banjo-Kazooie. Hey look, a squirrel tail on a hook, just like the ones in Bad Fur Day. They're making a reference. You can even attack now, as there are enemies, although they don't pose much of a threat. You're right there, mate. Your dash attack is very useful, I mean you can even pass through walls using it, but don't do it too much as I ended up going through the floor and getting stuck in this void. The problem being that you can't even pause in this level for some reason, so I couldn't exit out to the menu to get out of this void. My only choice was to press the home button and exit the game that way. When I did it all again and collected the lamps, the boss is defeated and the credits roll. Happy days. It is really cool that they threw this game in here as well as something you wouldn't necessarily find unless you were looking for it. It's just a really cool bonus. One thing that is curious though, is one of the people you help out is an N64 cartridge, who claims to be the true sequel to the game, but he then tells you that if you collect all 60 clefs, he'll let you play the new game. But when I did collect them all, he didn't talk to me. So what is the point in all these clefs if I can't do anything with them? This is just one of those things that makes the game feel like it isn't completely finished, and I really hate it when people release things that are unfinished.